Welcome to the third episode of the Force of Nature podcast. In today's conversation, I'm going to be chatting with Pablo Gregorini from Lincoln University. He's the Professor of Livestock Production and Agricultural Systems, the Director of the Lincoln University Pastoral Livestock Production Lab, and Head of the Lincoln University Excellence for Designing Future Productive Landscapes. I heard Pablo speak at the end of last year at Nicole Masters' two-day Soil Summit at Craigmore Station down in South Canterbury. I was fascinated by the research that he had been undertaking and personally just wanted to know about how he got to where he is. So put your headphones in and listen to today's episode with Pablo Gregorini. I'm sure you'll learn lots and hear about the fantastic research that he's been conducting. Welcome, Pablo. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you, Conan. Yeah, I'm very good today. It's a sunny day here in Canterbury, so that's cool.
Yeah, a bit of rain overnight, which was always nice. Just definitely getting pretty dry in some places.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce a bit more about yourself? How you've got to Lincoln, of all places, and I guess how you got into the agricultural industry as well.
That's very good. Very good. That's good. I left Argentina 25 years ago, so half of my life ago. I'm by formation an agronomist there. Then after I got my undergrad, I worked as a farm consultant for cow-calf operation systems in the big flood in Pampa for 2 years. Then I did my first master's in nutrition and physiology of ruminants, and then my second master's specialization in livestock production systems. Then I moved to the Netherlands, where I work in Wageningen University in the animal science team and the animal nutrition group and the International Agricultural Center. Between the Netherlands and the States, I spent a little bit of time in UK. It used to be the Institute of Grasslands and Environmental Research, working with Malcolm Gibb. And after that, moved to the States, did my PhD under Stacy Gunter, working in nutritional ecology and grazing management of ruminants, and ended up working in the USDA ARS in Pennsylvania, also working in grazing management and nutritional ecology of ruminants. While I was thinking of staying in the States, Dairy and Set brought me here. So I worked for Dairy and Set for 8 years. And then after 8 years, I decided to join Lincoln University as a professor of livestock production. And nowadays, I'm the professor of livestock production and agricultural systems at Lincoln University. I'm the head of a Center of Excellence for the Design of Future Productive Landscapes at Lincoln as well. I'm the director of the Lincoln University Pastoral Livestock Production Lab. Internationally, I'm a elected member of the Scientific Committee for the Farm Systems Design team. I've also chaired the International Scientific Committee for the Nutrition of Herbivores. But I got a life. My team is key, and my international team and my local team. And then we run projects here and all over the world. Hopefully
Oh, that's awesome. So you've been quite all around the world with your career so far. What kind of sparked your interest in agriculture first, and then to go down, I guess, the grazing system and livestock side of it?
Well, pretty much the ecology behind the grazing systems or the grasslands and rangelands. And if you think of that context, then I was most interested in the nutritional and foraging ecology of those grazing ruminants in those extensive landscapes, and especially wanting to know why they were eating what they were eating and how the system stimulate the motivation to graze in a particular way. But all of that evolved into their well-being in those systems and the systems of production embedded in those natural rangelands and grasslands, and how we interfere with them with those animals in those systems, and how working with those animals in those systems based on nutritional ecology end up affecting not only their well-being but also our health.
So do you find that, based on the research you've done all around the world, that the fundamentals are relatively the same across all the landscapes for grazing?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's, in my opinion, we got projects with reindeer in Norway, with bison in the States, with goats and sheep in Mongolia and Inner Mongolia, camels in Saudi Arabia. And I really think when people say, oh, well, this need to be proved in New Zealand conditions, they all need to be doing here. Well, in fact, the actual principles of the ecology and nutritional ecology, foraging ecology, farm ecology, they're all the same.
Yeah.
So yes, if that answers your question. Yeah. And that also, if we use those principles, it's like speaking an international language within the grazing world and farming systems that enable us to discuss and talk and learn from each other. If we consider that there are basic principles that govern not only how the animal graze and eat, but also how we should or not graze our animals in those landscapes and productive systems with a particular goal. That could be anything. From a productive and myopic point of view, right? I repeated that, from a myopic productive point of view, or a
Yeah.
more holistic approach that not only care about producing, which is good, making money is not bad, is good,
Yeah.
but also care about the land
Mm.
that those animals are grazed by us, right? And
Yes.
the environment that we all inhabit.
Yeah. And yeah, just doing things holistically doesn't mean you aren't going to not make money. I think that's kind of a misconception. And there's ways to actually improve that ecosystem function on your farm by changing your grazing systems as well.
Exactly.
I think in New Zealand, there's probably quite a lot for us to learn on that front, and like quite a lot of potential for increased production as well if we get our grazing systems correct, kind of integrate some of these holistic things as well. This is
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Coming from abroad to New Zealand, which still is the AV League of grazing systems. There is no
Yeah.
denying about it. Is it New Zealand leading in the knowledge of grazing systems and science? No, sadly it's not. And we have just published a very interesting publication, a research paper with Professor Ian Gordon about who are leading nowadays the grazing ecology and management of ruminants all over the world. And things have changed quite a lot. It used to be England,
Mm-hmm.
and New Zealand was around there, but nowadays it's the States, China, and Australia, following by Argentina and South Africa.
Mm.
So if you look at from a science point of view, in a grazing systems, and even in environmental protection, New Zealand doesn't even appear in the top 10, not even in the top 20. Right? So that is a wake-up call for us to say, where are we going? Do we need to change the way we look at the system? What is the actual science that needs to be done to lead the pastoral industry that New Zealand is still leading and the world look at? But there is still a lot of room to improve and go back to the leadership position New Zealand used to have.
So you think we've fallen like quite a long way behind, or do we just need to reprioritize our research to get back to the top there?
I don't think we have following a long way behind.
Okay, cool.
Right? But yeah, we are not top 5, we are not top 10, we are not top 15. I think we have, in my opinion, this is my own opinion, have been focusing too narrow or too myopic in some of our grazing science and pasture science and pasture ecology. We need to admit, and I'm saying that some of the things, we don't need to believe that we are the best farmers.
Yeah.
And I know it may not be friendly to say that, but we are not. We are not. And if we rely or sleep on those laurels that we are the best, Why would we change? Right? Because we are
Exactly.
the best already. And the literature and science show that although New Zealand pastoral systems are quite important and quite a system to look at from other parts of the world, we are not leading that science,
Yeah.
and we are not the best on that. And that should be an incentive, a motivation to go back to to that leadership that New Zealand was the leadership in that 50 years ago, in the times of McMicken, in the times of high stocking rate, production per hectare, and input systems, right?
Yeah.
Simple systems. Now the pastoral systems, the grazing systems, or livestock production systems in rangelands and grasslands have changed completely.
Mm.
They are not simple. They are complex systems. They are not complicated. They are complex, and we need to embrace that complexity. As the demand of the society is much different as compared to 50, 60 years ago. Before was let's produce because we want to make money. Fair enough. Before was let's change the systems because we want to develop our grazing lands. Nowadays is environmental protection, animal well-being, not welfare, well-being already, product integrity, etc., etc. So we cannot fix the computer with a hammer anymore.
No.
Systems are evolving to a more complex reality that involves the whole society rather than one simple wish to make money. And
Yeah.
I'm aware that what I'm saying may not be music to several ears, but that's what science tells us. And it's not a negative connotation or a negative comment, but also a wake-up call that we can go back to that leadership position we were at.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. And it may sound scary to make our systems like more complex, but there is proven, I guess, techniques out there, like you said, that we've fallen behind on, and we can learn from other countries. And I guess it's just learning to implement that new system and how it works, and the complexities will fall away as, I guess, that knowledge and experience comes with it.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you look at, even from a technical point of view, you look at the complexity, right? Complex systems are resilient.
Yeah.
Complex systems that embrace biodiversity, that embrace redundancy, are more resilient. When we think about system one, if you look at, the dairy system 1 to 5, system one is not resilient.
No.
Let's say that clear. It's not resilient. One biological system that is based on 2 species, grass and cow, can never be resilient. That's ecology 101. So going from there, maturing or co-evolving to a complexity that embraces diversity, redundancy, that is what's going to give livestock producers on agricultural systems the resilience that is needed to cope with all of this, the multiplicity of demands that we are having from several angles.
I absolutely agree. And it's not just like you said, it's not just the environmental, it's that animal well-being, which is probably not a concept that most farmers understand or would think has already come from the customer. But yeah, I guess if we're doing these things and looking at our system from a holistic point of view, we will tick a lot of these boxes, and you will be that more resilient with the changing climate as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned something, sorry I interrupted, Conan.
No, go for it.
You mentioned something that is, when we talk about welfare and well-being, there is a massive confusion. So welfare, well-being, what is that? What is not? Is health? And my team and I decided to talk about health. Right? It's a health of the system, health of the land, the health of the plant community, the animal, which include us as well. When we look at the definition of WHO, from health, it's not only the absence of morbidity or sickness, but the presence of a good mental state, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at the animal welfare, we have, originally those 5 freedoms, right? The absence of hunger, the absence of pain, the absence of the absence, and the absence of the absence, which is all right.
Yeah.
And that need to happen, right? But now we are moving to not only the absence, but the presence of foodscapes or environments of feeds or foods or farming environments or landscape environments where the animal graze or is grazed by us that enhance that mental well-being. In other words, people talk about happiness. We can't know. We are not able to know whether an animal is happy or not. But there are several variables or parameters that we can use to alter that foodscape, those environments, to create a better well-being or mental state to the animal. There are several works or reports in the literature that show that that can be done.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you can actually physically see a happy animal out in a paddock as well, doing their natural behaviour. So you can recognise it when you're out there. I guess what we lack is the experience in New Zealand to influence people in their grazing systems at the present, and that's probably a hole where farmers aren't aware of this work, or that they have fallen behind, and that there are ways to actually improve their systems, but there's probably a lack of knowledgeable people out there spreading that information. Do you think that is somewhere that as an industry we could invest in probably?
Yes, definitely. And that's one thing. And you're right. There was and there's still a lack of knowledge, right? And probably,
Yeah.
In my opinion, New Zealand farmers are the most receptive of technology and science. And I'm fascinated by New Zealand farmers. I consider myself a part of the New Zealand agricultural industry. And I used to work for them when I used to work at Dairy and Set, and I work for them and the future farmers now at the university. So there was a lack of information on how we can do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing things differently, it's not saying that what was done before was bad. Okay?
Yeah.
What was done before was done for a particular reason, had a purpose, and was good. But we need to keep evolving in our thinking and information. So the way of, if you go to a more holistic views of grazing systems and pastoral livestock production, it's to apply, those concepts of nutritional ecology, farm ecology, foraging ecology at the system level from the ground up. And there was a lack of information there. And that's is where my team here in New Zealand and internationally is doing in different grasslands and rangelands. Information regarding to how we can conceive a farm rather than a grass-producing farm, a farm that not only produce grass but produce different medicines, prophylactic, that enable animals to float around the farm, self-medicating themselves, for example, and change their tissue chemically. That will also how we can provide animals with environments that provide them pleasure to be in or enable choice, by enabling animals to choose rather than offer them monotony will definitely enhance their well-being, not only by the absence of some things, but the presence of the option to choose, to express their individuality. And we've done quite a lot in that arena of how providing a salad bar, if you like, at the pasture level, as opposed to a mixed salad, 30 species, or a monotonous diet, whether or ryegrass or lucerne, the key species in New Zealand, how moving from that monotony through diversity towards a more functional diversity for the animal, enabling them to express their individuality or choice, and the landscape will end up with better results from all points of view. Name it and we run experiments with dairy cows, with beef cattle, with sheep, with lamb, and with deer, and we are getting roughly average about 20% increase in productivity, average daily weight gain or meal production. We have a reduction of the environmental impact in terms of methane, in terms of nitrogen excretion. We got an enhancement of animal well-being in terms of improvement of oxidative and physiological stress of the animal. And we have an improvement of the product in terms of chemical composition and in more detailed metabolomic profile that has a positive effect in human health. And we run human trials as well.
So you are doing human trial side of it as well to see the effect of that product that they're eating?
Yes, yes. So
yeah.
we run first. What we did first, and this was just coming from a good old hypothesis from myself and my mentor Fred Provenza in the States and Stacy Gunter in the States as well, where we were evaluating how that biochemistry that we consider secondary, the plant secondary chemical compounds or anti-nutritional factors, in fact, they are essential not only for the plant to survive, but also for the animals. So we start looking at that from a nutritional and foraging ecology point of view and how we can aim to chemistry rather than mass. And when we were aiming to chemistry of the feed or the forage rather than mass, we were getting better results from a performance and animal well-being point of view. But then we thought, okay, if it is good for the plants, good for the animals, and we know that some of those components are related with the health of human beings, right?
Yeah.
And so when finally I got here to Lincoln and have, the support of Fertilizer New Zealand, Silver Fern Farms, Gili, Lincoln University, AgriSea, the New Zealand Science Challenge over Land and Water, we were able to run, and I'm sorry if I forget any sponsors, but we were able to run those grazing experiments that pretty much were evaluating, a grazing method, a grazing management. And the question is our health a reflection of how we graze our animals in terms of monotony, in terms of diversity, in terms of functional diversity of offering to the animal for a multi-purpose point of view. So we've done experiments with dairy cows, right? Evaluating the milk composition of those dairy cows, comparing ryegrass versus regen mix versus what we call functional diversity, right? Just strips of monocultures offering in a way. So long story short, salad bar instead of mixed salad. So we find, for example, that milk has an increase as opposed to the salad bar and the monotonous ryegrass or lucerne, right? We got an increment of dioxycarnitine, and I'm just reading a slide that in front of me. But and we know that deficiencies of that dioxycarnitine are related with renal failure, are related to organic acidemias, are related to fatigue, muscle tone, edema, diabetes, mitochondrial ischemia, or even alcohol abuse.
Okay.
That's from a fatty acid point of view. When we look at in milk, right? When we look at the metabolomics composition of the milk, so those metabolites that are related to our metabolism as well, we found out that as opposed to monotony and regen mix, or I wouldn't call regen mix, it's a multi-species soil.
Yeah.
The functional diversity, we increase panthothene, but 25%. And panthothene is vitamin B5, which is related to fuel use of the body, the use of glucose, the use of energy, the use of lipids. On that matter, it means that if you drink that milk, it's not only better, but you can lose weight.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm not a physician, so take it with caution, all right? But that's the thing. Then we found out that milk as well have greater content of tyrosine, which is related to antidepressant, anti-anxiety, you name it. But another important thing that we find in the milk of those dairy cows is that we reduce by twofold the content of 3-ethylmethylamine nitrous oxide. I'm sorry if my Spanglish It's not quite clear enough pronouncing those. But that component is related to cardiovascular disease, is related to inflammation, is related to arteriosclerosis, kidney failure, and so on. So at the end of the day, which milk are you going to drink, right? A milk that comes from a monotonous diet, and a monotonous diet leads the animal to incidental restriction, incidental augmentation, stress, inefficiency of nutrients, and so on. So pretty much if we treat the animals well, the animals will treat us even better. The other results that we found, for just throwing you some things, when we graze deer, we finish deer, red deer calves in the same treatments, right? We found that the venison of the animals being grazed on that functional diversity, again, the strips as opposed to mixed or monotony of ryegrass, have a greater content, massively 10 times more of aminovaleric acid betaine. And that betaine, it is related or possibly positively associated with fetal brain development, cognitive function. It's an anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, it's an anti-cancerogenic, anti-diabetic. So at the end of the day, if we treat, even though we are going to eat Bambi, right? If we treat Bambi well, Bambi will treat us even better. The other interesting thing that after all of that, they said, well, that was in milk, that was in venison. What happened if we feed people? Right? So we ran an experiment with Angus, and we finished those animals in the same treatments that I was mentioned before. And what we find that significant increase in people. So we fed those patties in people with exactly the same amount of fat. Each person eat half a kilo, and this is the first in the world cause and effect experiment. It is not an association. We feed these people that, and then we say, okay, well, now we take some blood samples at hour 0, 2, and 5 after eating that meal of meat, that patty. So we find in people in favor of functional diversity. The other two didn't have, they weren't different. Greater content of gamma tocopherol, which is vitamin E, right? And the gamma tocopherol instead of alpha tocopherol is one of the most potent antioxidants, and it's inversely related to colon cancer. Yes. We also have a difference with a big likelihood for them to happen, right? In the human blood. So it's a more content of deoxycholic acid. And sorry about my pronunciation again, but that acid, inhibit the production of cholesterol in liver, and also the absorption of cholesterol in intestine, right? And it also helped the decrease the formation of gallstones. We found in those people that were eating the patties from the animals grazing functional diversity, more hydroxymethylglutarate, which is, in other words, is statins, right? Yeah. If you had problems, go to the doctor, they will give you statins. We can say, maybe you may need to eat meat that came from animals grazed better. Somehow, something like that. We also find in people less indole sulfate, which is a uremic toxin, which is related to kidney disease and is related to cardiovascular disease. Right? So we find all of those. And I need to be clear. So significant difference in gamma tocopherol, and the last three, we found statistical differences in the blood of humans, and with a high likelihood for that to happen, right? So that means that at the very end of the day, our health, even in the very short term, reflect the way we graze our animals. Right? Yeah. If we move from a monotonous diet, if we move from a monotonous grazing system to a more functional biodiversified way of grazing, considering not only the soil, but also the animal at the same time, things can get better for them, for the soil, and for the animal. In fact, we have preliminary data that way could even have a greater impact, positive impact on the soil than a mix per se.
So a greater impact on the soil than a mixed species sward, you think it'll have as well? So
but that's a preliminary data. So take my comment with caution. We still need to do several other stats and several other soil microbiome analysis, etc., etc. So,
no, that's cool, because I'm absolutely of the belief that food can be a medicine to heal ourselves if we're eating the correct things. But quite often, I think most people don't understand the quality of their food. They're just thinking they're eating red meat and quality vegetables, but they might not actually have the chemicals that we've been talking about that can reduce inflammation. And so,
look at there is a lot of talk about now. Okay, nutrient dense food. And I think that we are heading to the right direction. Right? And I'm in conversation with I can't remember the non-governmental organization in the States, which is Nutrient Something Institute. Sorry about that. I can't remember the name. But there's a lot of talk about the nutrient dense, which is going in the right way. But I would just take the next step, right, and say instead of nutrient dense, it needs to be nutrient rich and functional, right? If I get my cuppa here and I fill it with sugar, it's really dense in glucose, right? Maybe if I got half of that with vitamins, with polyunsaturated fatty acids, but you name it. It's rich, it's diverse, right? So we go back to diversity and the functionality of that diversity. So whenever I hear people say nutrient dense, I say, well, that's good. Let's head that direction, but now incorporate richness, diversity of those nutrients, right? That will literally have a multifunctionality on you that will benefit more than simple density, if you like.
Yeah, and I heard, I think it was you or Nicole say that at Cragmore Station last year, and it really stuck with me, that variety, it's not just that density piece that's kind of opening up the conversation, but then thinking about the variety of what we're eating and what we're getting, that's where the health comes from.
Oh, exactly. I think that was me there, because I think there I present a lot of human stuff as well. If you look at, even with the forage we use nowadays, they were all decimated, I think, erased from that richness that they used to have. Or tomato varieties 50 years ago or 60 years ago, they have the same sweet flavor as the new ones, right? The new varieties. But back then, that sweetness was given by over 200 chemical entities. Nowadays,
and that's a huge difference.
That's a massive difference. And you can argue the same thing with some of the modern cultivars of some forages, that for the sake of reducing NDF for fiber or increase ME, they were denuded of all those anti-nutritional factors that in fact had a function not only for the animal and the soil, but have a function for all of us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that. And I guess part of that research that doesn't get, I guess it's about trying to grow more grass with higher ME that will be resilient, but then quite often, like you said, maybe those things that they've taken out might actually help those grasses be more resilient and stay in the pasture for longer as part of that sward. So I guess it's one of those areas that has probably not been looked at or just kind of disregarded, and we've gone down this path to where we are now with our ryegrasses and monoculture
and this is not an order against the ryegrass, right?
No.
Or an order against the lucerne. I think it's an order in favor to change, an order in favor to biodiversify, an order in favor of let's make our system complex, not complicated, and with certain redundancy in those systems that enable resiliency.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I find
The ryegrass, we're talking with nutrient density, and all. Sorry, I was just hung up in a thought here. We have results that we have increased productivity, blah blah blah, welfare, all the things that I mentioned, that with the same level of intake. So that means that those animals didn't need to eat more to produce more.
Yeah.
Even some of the animals ate a little bit less. That means that they were satiated, and that's what we are trying to get. Diets that satiate them and us, rather than diets that increase our appetite or enhance our motivation to eat and keep eating, right? And that leads us to several dietary problems. We want to reconnect those landscapes and humans and livestock in there with diets that satiate and nourish, rather than diets that make them eat more. I think intake and production, it's an all nutritionist view, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more you eat, the more you produce. Yes, there is no doubt, but there is also increase in inefficiencies there if you go that road.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, I always hear, I think this analogy that someone told me is like, you can eat like a big steak, and it's probably not that, like it could be not a great cut, and you're not that satisfied after. But if you get a really nice nutrient dense or nutrient variety
Rich.
and rich, like smaller piece of steak that's really nice, and you actually take your time eating it, you actually feel probably a bit fuller after that. Or if you compared it to, say, like a cheeseburger, you can eat 10 cheeseburgers because there's not that much nutritional variety or density in that. But if you had a nice, say, piece of steak and salad, that would probably fill you up and have half the calories.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's exactly like that. But you mentioned that if you knew the story of that more nutritious beef steak, if you knew that the animal and the whole landscape were paying attention to, rather than let's produce. And again, which is good, produce, make money, that's good. But that's when you eating that beef steak, transport you to that particular landscape. You can also flavor, not only you have that autosensorial experience, but also your mental mind experience. So that transport you to that place where that beefsteak was growing, or that animal grew.
Exactly. And I think there's actually plenty of opportunity for, say, that as like a value add product if they're doing this and actually command that premium price, because it's better for you. And they will get those, like you said, the oral flavors and everything as well. And they can connect to the story behind it, and then also know that they're actually getting a food source that's really good for them and will probably help them in the long term. So you see probably overseas more so that the regenerative meat companies, in particular in America, are doing quite well based on sort of this. I guess that's their marketing, but they are comparing it to a vastly different system with the grain and soybeans that they feed over there. There's opportunity here for New Zealand farmers to just make these subtle changes. And
Oh, definitely. Look, and that's one of the things that we are proposing here. When you go to those markets, say, well, it's pasture based, and they are claiming the benefit of pasture rare beef or pasture based milk against the grain or feedlot model.
Yeah.
Which is all right. There's plenty of information about that.
Yeah.
But we got an opportunity here in New Zealand because we are pasture based. We were pasture based, but now we know, based on our data and our systems that we are creating in a couple of farms of Lincoln University, that pasture is not pasture, as cheese is not cheese. as wine is not wine.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody tell you pasture raised, you say, so yeah. It's like
Yeah.
you want wine? Yeah. What sort of wine do you want?
Exactly.
It's like what you know what I mean. I think that the message is clear.
Yeah.
Pasture finish. Yeah. So
Exactly.
how do you finish that animal? What is that animal eating? Because, and again, we have the data now that can support the statement if our health is reflected in the way we graze our animals.
Exactly. And I think it's quite an easy thing for someone to get in behind once they get shown that they just increase the complexity of their pastures or their system, but not actually make their farming more complex as a result. It's just
Exactly.
changing the grazing system to match what the outcome is looking
Exactly.
for.
And that's one of the fears. And it's understandable, because
Yeah.
having a simple and a good, well polished system of right grass or a monotony or one single species, it's easier to manage that as compared to a complex. That is not enough now, and there is no need to fear complexity. We can have complex systems and not make them complicated.
Yeah.
There is it's an abundance of knowledge about, maybe not as much here, but all over the world, how to design and manage those systems. Right? We need to have the willingness of depart in a kind of an harmonious way from that old system to a system that give us resiliency, right? And open the doors for a new market in the world. We are just there to make another big leap of advance in what is grazing science, which is differentiate our product even more.
Mhm.
If the Americans are saying, well, it's pasture based, we are saying, well, hold on, we did that a while ago. We
Yeah.
were pasture based. Now we are going to pasture is not pasture, as
Yeah.
cheese is not cheese, blah blah blah, because we got the data there and we got enough evidence to make that statement. Now, how to implement it?
Yeah.
There is no doubt. There is a transition. It's
Mhm.
not black and white that you can change from one day to the other. It takes some time. Like we are putting in Lincoln University, we have designed a whole farm for a year and a half before we implemented a dairy farm,
Mm.
which is called the Integral Health Dairy Farm, where we apply all of those things at the same time. Trees under irrigation,
Yeah.
medicinal shrubs, you name it. Is it easy? No. No, it is not easy. It is not easy. There is no pain. There is no change without pain.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think we need to accept that, because the societal and political pressures are getting greater and greater, and we cannot stay behind.
No, and with pain comes growth as well, and that's an important thing that we have to actually go through some pain to learn. And the other side of it actually is generally a lot better than what might not seem like it at the time. That next level, I think it would even bring a bit of passion back to some of the industry for some farmers, just trying something new that they know will have all these outcomes. Could bring that passion and interest back into the industry and help actually bring in a lot more younger farmers as well.
Exactly, and I see that. Look, I see that quite a lot. At Lincoln, I give some lectures regarding to dairy science as well. I give lectures in meat and wool production. I examine that course. I examine the advanced livestock production and agroecology as well. I give lectures there, and I've seen a massive change in the future farmers about how receptive they are towards this new way of thinking. And I'm not saying that previously they weren't receptive. It's just things are changing, and we need to accept that things have changed. The only constant in life is change. So these things can be taught. There is not black and white. There is a transition period from all of this. But if you look at a simple number, when we are getting more and more information, diversifying the systems, even from a grazing point of view, functional, right? Not just for the sake of fill up with species. We increase, let's give it 20% more growth or faster or greater average daily weight gain, deer, beef, and lamb. Well, if you look at from that point of view, you can finish the animals 20% faster.
Exactly.
That, of course, will cover the cost. That will release an area of your farm that you could do whatever. Or you can, if you got, so with dairy cows, I can't remember, the level of production wasn't that great as the lambs and the beefies but it was around 10%. What are you going to do? Are you going to reduce your stocking rate by 20%? Are you going to have the same level of production and work less? Those are the things that I'm not the one to answer. But this data provide us that opportunity that we didn't consider before.
Exactly. And it gives the farmer options as well that he might not have had before. So they can choose what will work for them. So maybe they want to work a little bit less, or they want to drop a few cows out. It just gives them, I guess, further options that will probably benefit them in more ways than they realise now, which is an exciting prospect. Yeah. I just noticed that we're getting close on time as well before you get away. So I'll wrap up with a few questions, because we pretty much ticked off most of what I was going to have you that is anyway, which is good. So I guess the main thing, what really excites you the most about, I guess, the future of the agricultural industry? Is it that next wave coming through that you see have got this passion that is now matching, I guess, the consumer demands as well?
Yeah, what excites me the most is the change that I'm seeing in future farmers.
Yeah.
They're, and they're really conscious and also fast responding to the society demands fast.
Yeah.
A continuum of soil, plant, animal, and us.
Yeah.
Before it was one thing or the other, or myopic, narrow views. So now I really see and excite me the way the new farmers and the new generations of farmers that may not be, but at the time of farming, they consider all of that as a whole continuum and that holistic view.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Excite me as well, having in our hand, the possibility that by grazing management, simple grazing management, we can have an impact in human health.
Yeah, and that's quite an incredible thing. I think people don't probably realise that they can have such a significant, I guess, downstream effect on the people that are eating their product. And like that must be quite a cool thing to know, that you're setting off, say, your beef or your lambs, and knowing that someone's actually going to benefit their health from eating that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess for anyone who's listening, where's the best place for them to connect or see your research? Because it's very interesting.
Oh, well, look at, don't hesitate in calling me. You can find me in Lincoln University webpage, or my email is pablo.gregorini@lincoln.ac.nz. Cool. So, feel free to contact me, to call me, to stop by. And my team and I would be quite happy to answer questions. Even from skeptics, the worst thing that we could do is preach to the choir, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just even with hard questions, or just come to our farms, come and visit with us, and we can show you what we are doing. We can also show the people things that haven't worked, or hypotheses that we have rejected. But before that, I really want to thank my whole team. So it is not me. This is not a Pablo story.
Yeah.
This is a story of a big team of students, postdocs, colleagues from here and around the world.
That's awesome. And it's great to see that there's a big team actually around the world working on this, I guess, piece of the puzzle of farms. And yeah, it's very exciting what you're working on, I must say myself. I'm definitely going to have to go away and read a few more of your papers, I think, and your students' papers. I normally wrap up my podcast with a couple of quick fire questions. So the first one is, if you could change one thing about the agricultural industry, what would that be?
Good question.
Might be a big one.
I would. It's not that I would change. I would try to change. Yeah, I would try to change the view that a lot of the society had on the farmers. And farmers really have been the scapegoat. Farmers are not. There is no farmer, to my knowledge, that want to ruin the environment. No. With no farmers, no food, no us. So that's one thing that I would like to change, and also maybe changing the way. It's not only agriculture; it's ethical and sustainable agriculture that we need to convey to those people to change their mind.
Yeah, and we just need, I think, New Zealand farmers, that's one thing that they could really do, is sell their story about what they do each day to day on farm. And I know it's probably a bit daunting for them to show what they do on their farm, maybe through social media and that, because it opens themselves up to attack. But quite often that's probably the best way to educate these people that don't understand how ethical or sustainable they're being. Or they might not even realise they're doing it themselves. Like, they're actually doing a much better job.
The farmers are to feed the world.
Exactly.
And I think the farmers just need, what I would do is just increase the flow of information to the farmers, or how we convey that information. Simply because I'm a professor, that doesn't mean that I know everything. I got probably more doubts than answers. So establish that dialogue and just break that vicious cycle. Simply because I'm a professor, I know much more than you, so you come and listen to me. No, that is not the way it works.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
informing the urban communities. I say, well, farmers here are taking care of the environment. There is no farmer that want to pollute the environment. There is no farmer that purposely do things wrong. And keep in mind that no farmers, no food, no us.
Yeah, exactly. And that can happen very quickly, more quickly. And I think people understand. Looking back at your younger self, what's one piece of advice you would give your younger self looking back from now, say in your 20s, early 20s?
Choose a different career.
We wouldn't have
no. No. I one of the things that I would advise my young career, my young self, is to keep doing what you like to do.
Yeah.
I got to a point that, I was a consultant, and I said, look, my passion is science, and I follow that. Awesome. So if you feel something that is burning in you, that itch, scratch it, because if not, you will have it forever.
Exactly. And life can pass you by pretty quickly. And I feel that the worst thing that you can do is try. And if you fail, you're always going to learn something, but you'll probably be better off than you were if you don't do it. So to follow that passion or that itch is great advice. If you were to have dinner with any person, who would it be and why?
Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones.
That's a very good one. That'd be an entertaining dinner.
But if I had to have a more serious dinner,
I think Keith Richards is pretty good, to be honest.
If I had to have a more serious dinner, I share the dinner. I would imagine with the Pope, with the Dalai Lama, or someone like that.
Yeah, that'd be very, very interesting. And finally, last question, I always go, what's your favourite thing to cook?
Steak.
Steak?
Definitely.
Yeah. That's a common thing.
The ribs of an old cow with yellow fat. To me, those are the most flavorful cuts. It comes with a history. That yellow fat, that flavor, the animal products are the reflection of the history of our landscape and foodscapes, and thereby our grazing systems. All reflected in the chemistry of the soil, the animal itself, and thereby the health of our planet.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a perfect way to finish, to be honest. I really appreciate you hopping on today, Pablo. I've learnt a lot, and I've got a fair bit of reading to go away and do, but I think this has been very informative. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work in the future and the work of your students and your team as well, because it's obviously a big part of who you are.
Thanks so much, Conan, and anytime.
Thanks for listening into today's episode with Pablo Gregorini. I find that absolutely fascinating, the work that he's been doing over the years and his experiences from all around the world. I think we can all learn a lot from the work that Pablo's doing, and I'm very excited to see that research and that him and his team are going to be putting together in the future. If you'd like to get in touch with Pablo, I will put the contacts details below. Otherwise, thanks for listening in to today's episode of the Force of Nature podcast.